All right, welcome back to E2W Coast Sports. We're going to be talking a little NBA recap. Just a few games last night because of the kickoff of the NCAA Tournament. Want to touch on Denver, Indy, and Phoenix. And then we'll talk a little bit about the upsets already in the NCAA Tournament. Always fun the first couple days because there is undoubtedly a few big upsets that bust people's brackets. So we'll touch on that. Let's kick it off with the NBA though. Denver was able to break their skid of that losing streak against Detroit, which great team to break that skid against. Detroit is definitely a bottom feeder team right now. Speaking of Detroit, let's touch on Wiseman here. Wiseman is getting a lot of attention because of the trade, right? Since he was moved from Golden State to Detroit, he has been playing a lot more. He's been getting buckets, but they're still not winning. So what do you take from that? Wiseman is definitely a great offensive player. I think just overall, he is a great offensive player. He's super athletic. Obviously, he's a 7-footer, but he needs touches and he needs time, and that just wasn't afforded to him in Golden State. So I think here in Detroit, he is not only going to get the time and touches, he's going to get the experience that he needs, if he's going to be that all-star potential level player. Really, with him, only time will tell. Denver, this was not really a must-win for them, but it was something that they needed considering they lost their last 4. So moving forward, I think Denver is going to get the 1 seed. They are still a few games ahead of the second place in the West. And Denver, they're going to get their wins. So I think it's going to be Denver number 1. It looks like Sacramento and Memphis are going to be the 2 teams fighting for the 2nd seed there. If I was Memphis, I would go to the 3rd seed because I think they match up really well against Denver and they wouldn't have to play Sacramento. Sacramento is just one of those teams. I mean, they're averaging like 120 points a game, which is just like off the charts. So Memphis, I think, is probably okay with sliding down to the 3rd seed. Sacramento, I think it doesn't really matter where they land up. If they're the 2nd seed, if they're the 3rd seed, they're going to be one of those two. It's Denver is not so daunting that, you're like, oh, let me get the 2nd seed so I don't have to play them until the Western Conference Finals, which even if Denver gets to. So we'll see. Quick touch here. Indiana beats the Bucks at home. I don't think you put much into it. Indy has some really good players, and I think with Indy, they can catch you on a night, right? Bucks probably were like, oh, it's one of the bottom feeder Eastern teams. We don't really have to get up for this, and I think Indy just caught them on one of those nights. Not really much to take there. Phoenix barely beats Orlando at home. Good win for Phoenix, especially considering where they're at roster-wise. Let's touch on Orlando really quick. I think Paolo is sort of a bona fide, future all-star. Paolo was probably one of the better first overall picks in the last couple years, not only because of his skill. He is about the size of LeBron James, which is just crazy. I think watch out for Orlando down the road. I think they're going to be a pretty good team. They are acquiring the personnel. They had Jalen Suggs. Orlando's going to be one of those teams where, they're sort of like a Cleveland, but a couple years behind. They're picking up young players. They are beating good teams. I'm pretty sure they're perfect against Boston and Golden State this season, which is just nuts because their record is awful. But Orlando has the talent, and once they get disciplined, if they get a good coach or if the current coach they have works out, they're going to team that, they're going to be in the play-in mix. They're going to be in the playoffs in the very near future, and they're not going to be a team that you want to see because they are young and they're going to beat you up. That was the NBA last night. Let's move over to the tournament here. I'm sure you guys all saw that UVA gets upset by Foreman. That was quite possibly one of the worst last plays I've ever seen, especially considering that the coach had his timeout, had one more timeout left in the pocket, and he didn't call it when his player got trapped in the corner there. Instead, he threw the ball basically to half court, easy steal, and then the Foreman player threw it to his teammate on the three-point line, and it was a bucket. They were up by 2, I think, at that point. So just an awful ending for UVA. This, obviously flashbacks of 2018. So maybe that means next year in 2024, UVA will win the whole tournament. We'll see. And then Arizona loses to Princeton. they just fell apart in the second half. I mean, Arizona is by far the better team, but they didn't have it in the second half. And this is what makes the tournament so great. It's fun to see these teams that if you catch them on an off night, they can get bounced early. And that's exactly what happened at Arizona. So not a whole lot to take there as far as Princeton. Are they going to be a darling? I don't think so. I think they just had a good second half and Arizona had a bad half and it just matched up at the same time. ESPN said there's only 0.003% of perfect brackets left. Of about 20 million that were made before the tournament started. And that is because of UVA and Arizona both losing. So wrap it up. Some exciting games today. Another, first round matchup. I think we're going to see some upsets. Overall, I'm excited for this tournament. This is definitely one of the better sports spectacles of the year just because everything is one and done. And it is really cool to see these young guys come in, really shows who's going to be picked in the NBA and what they look like. So Warriors got Atlanta tonight. No Draymond. The roster looks pretty thin, but Atlanta's pretty bad. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.